Right now I want to talk about 4 exercises that I absolutely love that will help improve core and shoulder stability. One is the overhead squat. You can clean and press the bell overhead. You want to make sure you press grip the bell, keep a locked arm, and focus on the bell at all times. From here, you're going to squat down, maintaining a lockout position with the bell. So pushing the hips backwards, and use this hand as a guide down the inside of your thigh until you touch the ground, and then stand back up. Once again, push back, rotate, locked arm, hips down, and back up. You will really feel this wrench in your core. Great for
the overhead squat is an exercise that I never really had an interest in until recently, and the more I did it, the more I fell in love with it. It's another exercise that gives you a lot of bang for the buck. It works on shoulder stability, hip mobility, and it really is core wrenching, more than what you would think. The overhead squat is performed by placing the weight overhead, positioning your feet about shoulder width apart with the toes pointed slightly out. We're going to use good squat technique by making sure the knees are tracking the toes, pushing the hips back, and now rotating slightly so that we can focus on the hand that's in the air, squatting down, moving our hand through the inside of our legs to touch the ground, and standing up. The tendency with some people when they perform the overhead squat is as they rotate their body to focus on the hand that's in the air, this knee will buckle. The one thing that we do to help prevent that is to slide the opposite hand down the inside of the thigh to the ground and move extremely slow. Once again, this is a slow movement. It's not a movement that is performed for speed. It is a grind. And you've got to perform it with precision, just like all of these other movements that promote core and shoulder stability in order to be safe. Now, if the client is still having issues with the knees buckling, one of the tricks that we use with the squat is to teach them to try to spread the floor with their feet. Try to push the floor apart with their feet as they stand up. So if we're struggling on buckling at the knees here, if they'll try to push the heels down and spread the floor, it helps force the knees back over the toes. Once we place the weight overhead, one of the first things we want to encourage the clients to do is to grip the bell tightly, just like the windmill. Push the hips back, rotate the body slightly as we descend, keeping the arm locked, sink down, drive the heels down, and stand up. From another angle, kick the hips back, rotate, sink down, and stand up. Tremendous exercise. It's actually very, very easy to teach, and it's an exercise that if people struggle to get depth on, they just will continue to practice. And they have to learn to pull themselves into the hole, and there are certain techniques that we can use to help them achieve that as well. There are 3 exercises that we want our students to be able to perform before we teach the overhead squat. First of all, we want our students to be able to clean, press, and stabilize the kettlebell overhead in a good lockout position. Until they have the shoulder strength and stability to do this, there's no need to move on. The next thing we want them to be able to do is to perform at least a good mid-range windmill. This shows that they have the core and shoulder strength and stability and flexibility to move on and perform the overhead squat. The next exercise that we want them to be able to perform is the goblet squat. We want to see the student demonstrate enough hip flexibility and proper technique with the knees in line with the toes to do a goblet squat before we move on to the overhead squat, which is an upper-lower movement. Once the student can master those 3 exercises, they are now ready to move on to